Welcome back to the Ground and Simplicity podcast. I'm Bonnie from the Not So Modern Housewife, and I'm joined by my good friend Danielle from the Rustic Elk. And we are here to help moms live more simply and find joy in being less busy. Today, we are talking about being prepared and what that looks like realistically. This is going to be fun. All right. Mm-hmm. I feel like we should say a disclaimer that we are not preppers, and we don't think that being a prepper is the same as being prepared.
You could also say that preppers aren't necessarily homesteaders, but in some fashion, all homesteaders are preppers.
True, I guess, sort of. So, all right. To me, the big distinction to me is that a lot of preppers are more focused on stockpiling than figuring out how to do things themselves. Now, there are a lot of preppers who do both. They have a stockpile. Because, I mean, there's going to be some things that are going to be really hard for us to make ourselves. Like, I know preppers who will stockpile medication, stockpile ammo. Now, technically, you could make your own ammo, but I think their thinking is that, at least for the interim, a lot of them are really looking at it as almost being a form of currency. When stuff hits the fan, then they'll be able to trade medicine and ammo for stuff they need. The thing is, like, while it's fun to think about living in a dystopian world, the reality of living in a dystopian world is, I really hope it never happens. But there are so many things that we are more likely to come across than like total societal collapse. So for me, I would rather focus on the things that are more likely to occur. And plus, like, I don't have a lot of storage space. And if we're talking about trying to live simply and get back to basics, to me, like, having a stockpile of stuff is the opposite of that, because all you're doing is, one, you're living in a fear mindset, but you're also, you're collecting all of this clutter that really just weighs on you mentally.
Right. And I also think, I was talking to somebody about this a while back, and I said, how people survived the Great Depression and the Second World War wasn't because they had bunches of crap stuffed in some closet somewhere and underneath their bed. It was because they knew how to do things and their supply chain was local. So I think,
right,
like, instead of saying, oh, well, I need to make sure that I have 200 jars of pimentos, you would say that, I need to know how to grow those or where I can source them locally, because if stuff really hit the fan, then having that skill set is going to help you more than a bunch of jars, especially if you had to leave wherever you were.
Right. Well, and we even saw recently, as this past summer, when there were the really bad storms that hit Tennessee, or I guess maybe that was early fall or late summer, but people who had a pantry full of canned goods, that stuff was completely wiped out. I mean, if a tornado hits your house and wipes out your house, it's wiping out your entire stockpile. Now, right. I'm not saying that we shouldn't put back food. For me, really, like, one of the things that drove me nuts when extreme couponing was really big is you had people buy, like, just completely clearing the shelves of stuff just because they could buy it for cheap. And one, I feel like that's extremely greedy, because the next person who needs to buy that, and maybe they're also couponing, but, like, for instance, my family, we never, even when we were completely out of work for a full month. Neither one of us had any income, and we still did not qualify for food stamps because we had made too much money in the previous 12 months. And so in those types of, and like, we have food banks, but you can only go to each food bank like once every 2 weeks or once every 4 weeks, depending on the rule of that food bank. So you're extremely limited in, like, where you can find assistance. And so we were relying on clipping coupons and trying to get stuff as cheap as possible and, taking advantage of sales. And then you go to the store and there is none to be bought because it's actually a good deal and somebody went through and cleared the entire shelf. And meanwhile, they have a garage full of dish soap. It's like, what are you going to do with all of it? You can't eat dish soap. Like, I mean, I will buy dish soap in bulk, but I'll get like the giant things of it so that I can refill the little one that stays on my sink. And I mean, the two giant jugs will last us at least 6 months.
Right.
So, I mean, what is the purpose of having 5 years worth of dish soap in your garage or your basement or whatever?
Right. And what good is it going to do you if, there's no power grid and you haven't figured out how to supply yourself with water? You can't wash the dishes anyway. The soap does you no good.
Well, right.
I mean,
that too. And the thing is, I will say preparedness was actually my job in the Air Force. I mean, the bulk of it was chemical warfare defense. But our stateside mission was emergency preparedness. It was teaching people about local hazards and how to prepare for them and how to, keep their families safe. Because, yes, these guys may someday encounter chemical weapons when they deploy, but 99% of the time, they're going to be home with their families and and if they can't keep their family safe, then expecting them to, go off to war and protect everyone else isn't going to matter when their family's not taken care of. And so, it was not about having a stockpile of stuff. I mean, we would even tell them, don't worry about having like a month's supply of things. Worry about having a week's supply, because that's going to be at least enough to get you like through the immediate hazard. And then, and then you can kind of replenish your supplies beyond that. But I mean, like, I know when we had the hurricane, my garden was wiped out. So having a garden really didn't do me any good at the time. Now, we knew how to run a chainsaw and we knew how to do our own cleanup. The road and driveway washed out. We knew we had the tractor, we could fix it. And so we could actually get in and out of our driveway. And, those are the skills of how to actually take care of yourself and not be dependent on someone else to come and rescue you. That's really what's going to help you in an emergency and, in any type of disaster. And I don't worry so much about like stockpiling stuff that I can turn around and trade as currency, because to me, like being able to barter skills is going to be a lot more valuable when you've got so many people that just don't know how to do basic stuff.
Right. Well, I think, over the last 2 years, it's become very apparent that there are the people that you talked about, warning the people that you taught, don't try to get a month's worth of stuff, just, get through the next week. And I think we've noticed that a lot of people think the other way. Like anytime there's a crisis, they think they need to, buy all of the things, regardless of what the crisis is. Just like we just had a snowstorm and I went to the store to pick up something. I don't even remember, vitamins. And I just happened to walk through the store when I was there. And it was the day before the snowstorm was supposed to hit. And it was empty. I mean, there was nothing in the store. They bought all the milk. They'd bought all the eggs. They bought all the meat. It was all gone. Yeah. And it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because most people are buying more than what they need for the immediate threat. They're buying stuff like they're going to be stuck in their houses for the next, 10 weeks.
Yeah.
And you're not.
And right. And the thing is like, I know, I understand, especially the last couple of years, we've realized that the just in time food system does not work.
Right.
And so, yes, we're going to run into cases where like the grocery store you're going to go in and there's not going to be anything in the meat case. Because I've been almost every time I've gone to the store, the meat case has been almost completely empty. They still have trucks coming in, but people are coming in and literally just cleaning out the cooler as soon as the truck comes in.
Right.
And I mean, I realize we can't control what other people are doing. So maybe having a week's supply isn't enough of a safeguard for people. They want to have more of a buffer than that. Then you can, do 2 weeks worth. But
Right.
when you've got, I mean, people are literally buying like a month's worth of stuff
Or more.
and they may not have the freezer space for it. I mean, how much of that stuff is going bad and how much food waste are we creating just because we're just so afraid that it's not going to be there the next time? Um, and the thing is, like, okay, yes, I would prefer to have hamburger over ground turkey, but I also can use ground turkey if I need to, if there's no hamburger. You know, it's like, I think that being able to look at stuff as from a problem solving mindset and like, okay, how can I make do with what is available to me? I think can serve people a lot better in the long term. I know that my meat supply is not stable. And so we are going to be getting more meat chicks so that we can, one, provide some to the local area because obviously the local area needs more chicken. And I want to put some chicken away in the freezer for us. But again, you know, it's like I'm going to focus on, okay, what will we realistically need for so many months? I don't need like a full year of chicken, full year's worth of chicken in my freezer. I can look at, okay, how long does it take me to grow out the next batch? And I can just keep a rotation going.
Right.
I realize some people are going to be like, oh, well, doing, you know, ordering in meat chicks isn't sustainable. Well, they're only 3 hours away, the breeder that I order from. So it's really not that bad. I mean, if worse came to worse, I could drive to Georgia and go pick them up myself. And then also, you know, we're going to look at probably getting like a quarter of a cow that we can put in the freezer and have it. But it's, you know, it's twofold. It's one, it's buying locally, supporting the local farmers and having enough for us, but also, you know, we have a big 21 cubic foot freezer that we bought for the purpose of having a surplus of meat. So I don't have to worry about that, you know. And then, you know, we can focus on growing our own vegetables and doing the best we can. I mean, obviously we can't, you know, foresee every possible scenario, but for me, it's more about just doing what we can with what we have and focusing on, you know, best case scenario. Plan or hope for the best, plan for the worst, right?
Right. I think, you know, as far as the mindset thing, it's kind of like when you work with money mindset and you talk about having an abundance mentality versus the scarcity mentality. And the fact that, you know, the last 2 years have showed us that globally, we can't really depend on the supply chain necessarily, but at the same time, you know, you find ways to source, you know, direct from your farmer. I mean, you know, they grow meat and vegetables everywhere. It's not like there's, you know, there's not in the United States anyway, there's really not any food desert.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we have to look at it from an abundance mindset, you know, that there's plenty to go around. It's just a matter of, you know, using those resources better, I guess. It's not really what I'm looking for, but, you know, because we throw so much food away, especially here in the US. And like you said, these people are buying all this meat. Do they even have freezer space for it? Did it go bad? You know, if you buy fresh produce, it doesn't stay good, like at all, especially. But well, I think we have to look at it.
People get surprised by that when they buy local and then it only lasts a few days. It's like, well, that's because it's actually being picked at the peak of freshness. Right. The stuff that you get at the grocery store was picked unripe so that it could travel across the country and really not even ripening until after you've purchased it and brought it home. So yes, it's going to last a little bit longer, but
it also has no flavor.
Right.
But I think as far as being prepared, it's not, I mean, sure, you can grow a bunch of food and you can, you know, can it or freeze dry it or dehydrate it or whatever. That's all great. But you need to have the skills to replenish that supply or know where you can obtain more of it should something happen that you're not able to. Like we can't depend on the just in time mentality. But at the same time, it's like we go to the other extreme, like, oh, well, they have 5 pounds of hamburger at the store, so I need to buy all 5 pounds instead of buying 1 pound and letting, you know, 4 other people have a pound of hamburger as well. Right. And I think we have to, I think it's kind of sad and depressing to me that we've kind of become a society where that's where people, that's how they think. Oh, well, there's 5 pounds of hamburger. I'll eat it eventually. So I'm buying all 5 pounds of hamburger. Or there's, 3 packages of toilet paper. So I'm going to buy them all.
Yeah. Look out for I and screw the other guy.
Right. That's pretty much. Yeah. And it's kind of sad.
It is. And again, it goes back to like, if you only need a pound for this week, then more than likely there's going to be another pound there next week. And I think that a lot of this also comes back to people being so detached from their food supply, because the hamburger is just a commodity. It's not a piece of a cow that you raised. And now you're like that, that sacrifice that cow made was for nothing because you're just throwing away the hamburger because you didn't use it all or whatever. It's, it's just a thing you buy at the store, and I can always just get more later.
Right. Yeah. Since we hunt, we were having deer steaks the other night, and one of my kids had like 3 little niblets of deer steak left. And I'm like, you're going to eat that, right? I'm full. And I mean, these are like tiny little niblets. And I'm like, no, you're not full. And I'm like, that deer did not die so that I could throw that in the trash or feed it to the dog.
Actually, it's funny. I have a friend of mine that you would really like because her pettiness is just so much fun, but not in a bad way. But she basically, so before the pandemic, her like 90 something year old grandfather, they would go to Bob Evans every Sunday for lunch. And that was their tradition. Well, of course, since the pandemic, like he has not gone out to eat anywhere. So she decides that she's going to make him a really nice meal. And so she got like these really nice steaks and invited her grandfather and her uncle over. Well, her uncle is complaining because he apparently doesn't like the store where she bought the steaks from. And so she's like, I don't even care. She's like, I'm going to feed his $20 steak to the dog in front of him. If that's the way he's going to be, someone is going to enjoy that steak. And I was like, like cold steak is really good as a leftover, slice it up, put on top of a salad. She's like, oh yeah, I agree. But I really want to see the look on his face when I feed his steak to the dog.
Oh, and I think that's another thing though. We need to learn to, just like we talked about last time, support our local farmers and find ways to source that stuff locally. So that number one, we are a little more attached to our food supply because the hamburger at the store probably came from several cows. And number two, so that we don't have to worry about, like our stores have not had chicken in weeks.
Oh, wow.
Like literally no chicken.
Because I actually did talk to the meat department at our store, and he's like, we're getting chicken. Because, well, what it was is I went in there and they actually had chicken. And I had gone in to buy the chicken because I knew they were doing a buy one, get one sale, but they didn't have the sign up. And he's like, that's because we just got the chicken back in today. He's like, the cooler was completely empty. So we took the signs down because there was no chicken to sell anyone. I'm like, all right, as long as I know that the chicken is BOGO, we're good. And yes, I bought 2 packets of chicken, and guess what? I used them all for one recipe because my children are pigs. But
that sounds about right.
It's like it's almost to the point where if I can't buy the bulk package of meat, it's not even worth it to me anymore because like I need the whole bulk package of meat.
Yeah. Yeah, when we buy stuff at the grocery store, I always buy the family packs, and we end up using like the whole family pack in one sitting. I'm like, if this was meant for like more than one meal, then.
Well, I try to like, especially with the price of hamburger, I try to stretch it out a little bit. So usually I'll get the 3-pound pack of hamburger, but like 1 pound is spaghetti, 1 pound is tacos, and 1 pound is chili or something like that. Yeah.
Right. We'll do that too. Except I've noticed that 1 pound doesn't make as much anymore. Like it has more fillers in it.
Yeah.
So
I think they're just
like this itty bitty.
Yeah. There's a lot more moisture in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and again, that's also why I want to get a quarter cow because it's just beef.
Yeah.
they might cut a little bit of fat in with it. Like we do have a butcher, or not a butcher, but it's a meat shop that has really good steaks, but they cut so much fat into their hamburger. And I mean, it's got great flavor, but dang, it cooks down. This really kind of goes back to the whole like local food supply thing. But there's the whole food is free movement. Have you seen these guys? And
Yes.
I don't necessarily agree with their message. But the whole mentality behind it is that if you've got one person who grows carrots and one person who grows broccoli, and then you guys swap, you're essentially eating for free.
Right.
I mean, the only problem is you've still got time and inputs, so it's still not free. You've got sweat equity.
Right.
But it's a good way to kind of help your neighbor out. And if you're worried about being able to eat in emergency situation, or stuff hits the fan, then that's going to be an important part of our communities and our network, is being able to trade things like that, because
Right.
we're not going to be able to produce everything ourselves. We're either going to do a half crap job at it, or we're going to like fail miserably and burn out.
Right.
So if you're really just focusing on one thing, then it's going to be a lot easier for you, because you can really kind of streamline your focus and learn to be really good at that one thing with my dozen animals. But
yeah, I think that, building that community and, like forging those relationships with local people in the event of some kind of disaster or stuff really hitting the fan or whatever is going to be the best way to survive whatever it may be, versus, number one, trying to do it all yourself, because it's not going to happen. And number two, trying to stockpile a bunch of stuff. I've never really understood the whole stockpiling thing. Maybe it's just not me, but
I mean, like I said, I think it goes back to that scarcity mentality, and being afraid of not having like the conveniences that you're used to. Because I mean, most of the stuff that they're stockpiling are convenience items.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to have a true stockpile, it's got to be shelf stable stuff.
Right.
I mean, and granted, yes, you can have, freeze dried food and things like that. But again, eventually your stockpile is going to run out.
Right.
And honestly, like, I mean, I have a lot of freeze dried food. I did stock up on it after we had Hurricane Irma, because there was no, fresh food available. But I like stuff that tastes good and has, a certain texture, and freeze dried food doesn't always do that for me. So,
right. Well, and, and that's not to say that I don't think that people shouldn't, grow some food or get at the farmer's market and can up a bunch of stuff, or freeze dry it at home if you can afford a harvest right, or, dehydrate a bunch of stuff or whatever. I definitely think that everybody should be doing those things. But at the same time, I don't think that we should be going to extremes with it and thinking, that we need to have 3 years worth of food in our larder.
Well, because even most of that stuff is going to have a shelf life. And even the shelf stable stuff has a shelf life.
Right.
I mean, goodness, like I had to throw out my entire pantry because weevils got into it, So that was only like first bought our place and moved in and everything. But and we had another year that we had a pantry moth infestation. Like, it's just, and you live and learn. Now any dry goods that come home from the grocery store go in the freezer first.
Or you can get Gamma Seal buckets, and those work.
Yeah, well, and that's what we do store a lot of stuff in mason jars and hard plastic.
Mm-hmm.
But like if it's coming in like the pantry moths came in a package of breadcrumbs, and so if I would have put them in the freezer first, it would have just killed everything that was in the breadcrumbs.
Right.
So they wouldn't. I mean, yes, if I had them in like a sealed container, then it would have only infested the breadcrumbs. But,
right.
then whatever. So, yeah, I do that with beans and Well, lately pasta hasn't stayed in our cupboard long enough to worry about if it's coming home with any stuff in it. It's about the only food group my children will eat. So
Same.
Yeah, but anyway.
This episode was brought to you by Kitchen Botanicals, your sustainable gardening headquarters. Stop by kitchenbotanicals.com and get a look at our 2022 seed varieties, as well as supplies and pest control products to help you with your organic garden. 2022 is a great time to take care of yourself with our Pampered Gardener subscription box. Every month, you'll receive all natural self-care products, untreated heirloom seeds, high-quality garden tools, organic garden amendments, cute and practical supplies, and fun products that we know you'll love. This is your opportunity to take care of yourself in the garden. I started the Pampered Gardener subscription box because I had gone through a time of not taking care of myself and dealing with the stress that it put onto my body. I was ill, I was tapped out, and I felt like I couldn't possibly pour any more out of my empty cup. So I created the Pampered Gardener subscription box for women like me who wanted to get back to what they enjoy, but also wanted to love themselves. So we've put together this collection of gardening and self-care products that are geared towards women who love to garden. You'll get things such as gloves, lotion, bags, hats, sunscreen, mosquito repellent, things that you can actually use, but also things that you'll enjoy. And don't worry, there will still be plenty of gardening tools, seeds. We've created a subscription box like no other, by gardeners for gardeners. Order your own box today.
Since we've pretty much established that stockpiles don't work, I guess what are some skills that you think people can work on to actually be prepared?
I think, like if gardening, of course, knowing how to, grow food from seed, how to propagate, different plants and things like that. I think that is important. Even if you can't stay where you are, like let's say you had to bug out or whatever, you should know how to do it in the climate that, if you're one of those people that plans to bug out, you should know how to do it in the climate that you're going to leave to, as well as the climate that you're currently in, if you're not able to make it to wherever it is you're planning to go. Like we're in zone 5 here. I know lots of people have property in like the UP, and that climate's completely different than it is here,
right?
Because it's so much colder. So, I think that those things are important. And you mentioned chickens, and I wanted to say that no, they're not sustainable. We have 25 of them in our garage, but they're not, because it's so hard to hatch them out, because there's a lot of them are almost to the point where they're sterile, and they're forage crops are not made, Bonnie, to hang around for a year.
Okay, but most of the people that I know that are breeding them, like they've got it's a hybrid cross. Right. So the two lines that they're crossing are fertile.
Right.
But yes, obviously the offspring, you can't breed them and they breed true. Now, the ones that I've been raising, they actually, I had some hens that did hatch out their own eggs last year, which was rather crazy. Impressive. But their babies are a lot smaller than the parents were. Like they look more. The one that I know of that's running around looks like white rock. Looks like a white rock hen. So they're not going to breed true because they're a hybrid. For me, any of the other like dual purpose breeds that I've tried to raise have not had the meat to bone ratio. They've just they've been scrawny. And the meat's been a little bit tough. And so I like that they grow fast, and that I don't have to feed them out for a long time. I don't have to keep them for a long time. I can rotate birds through quickly. And I get a nice sized, finished bird after I'm done butchering it. I like a pretty roast chicken.
I know. I'm not saying it's bad. Like I said, we have 25 in our garage right now, but I think we have to kind of used to like those dual purpose birds, because honestly, that's more like what chicken is supposed to taste like. It's supposed to be tough. It's not supposed to necessarily be, nice, tender meat, because chickens aren't made to grow to full size in 8 weeks. They're just not. Well, we've gotten so used to it because that's what you buy at the store. That's, like what you and I usually grow out. It's what most homesteaders grow out. But at the same time, I think we have to get used to those other flavors and learn how to, like what bird does best for us. Like we've tried out several different birds. Lots of people grow white rocks, just white rocks.
Mhm.
And they, do take longer to grow out. They're not going to grow out to butcher weight in 8 weeks, but in 16 weeks or so, you can probably butcher them and it's still going to be fairly tender and they're going to have a decent meat to bone ratio. It's not going to be as good as the Cornish, and then I know a few people that raise some of the French breeds that I'm not even going to try to pronounce because I don't speak French. But they've had good luck with those. We tried Delawares and it was an awful experiment.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
I will like my out of the, because we breed our own egg layers. The Australorps are a much larger bird, but it takes them a lot longer to fill out. And so I can pretty much only really use them for soup. The extra Barnevelder cockerels that I've butchered have actually made a halfway decent dressed bird. Better than the Australorps. So if I had to pick the two, I'd go with the Barnevelders. But as long as the Cornish crosses are available,
well, yeah,
I'm going with it. I know.
But the other benefit to the dual purpose is they can free range and forage. You don't necessarily have to feed them on, grain feed. Whereas the Cornish, if feed isn't available, then you're kind of screwed because Cornish can't forage.
Well, now mine did. And that's why I like this breeder is they're breeding specifically for pastured poultry. So, and they're in South Georgia, so they're breeding for heat tolerance. So it ended up with a much hardier Cornish cross that didn't have the leg problems. They were much more active. They had no problem foraging. I mean, obviously when they were still chicks, I had to raise them in a brooder, just like I do all of my other birds. But for those last few weeks, yeah, I had them out foraging and running around. And
I mean, ours foraged when we raised them before. And I'm sure if I have any grass available before these guys are done, that I can get them to forage. But, I still have to supplement them with feed. They're not.
Yeah, and I supplement all of mine with feed. But I mean, they're out eating bugs. But anytime I've tried to like take them off feed, the egg laying goes down, or like they're doing more eating their own eggs.
Right.
So yeah,
they're gonna get
saves me problems.
Somehow. Oh yeah.
Right.
And then as far as the meat birds and the egg layers, I think if you can have a rooster, you should have a rooster just so you have, try to get at least one hen that will go broody for you. So if you don't have an incubator, you can, try to get her to hatch a clutch of eggs for you so that you can have eggs and or meat. I mean, you can eat any chicken. It's just not really fun to eviscerate a really small chicken.
Right. For people that are looking for like a breed that will sit on eggs for them. I know like my Australorps will go broody almost annoyingly so. But I haven't seen that as much. Yeah, I haven't seen it as much with hatchery Australorps, but like mine are the exhibition heritage bred. So they like as soon as it starts to heat up in the summer, they're like, nope, I'm done laying eggs, and they just sit on everything they can find.
Yeah, that's ours were hatchery, and ours did that. All of them. They just
and like my
and one of our Australorps hatched.
Oh yeah, one of my hatchery Orpingtons was always broody too. But I know people who will raise a couple of silky hens just so that silkies will lay on or sit on eggs for them, because silkies are so notoriously broody, and they're really good moms. But that's an option, if someone's wanting, they don't want to have to deal with the incubator, but they want to hatch eggs, you can look at having a couple of silkies. Going back to gardening, something I wanted to mention is planting perennials in your garden or around your garden, because especially once they're established, even if you do have some type of a disaster, they're going to be more likely to come back and keep producing for you. And once they're established, they're a lot less maintenance than just trying to keep your annuals alive. So,
unless
I mean,
raspberries.
I don't know. I haven't had.
Raspberries
I can
are
grow.
terrible.
I
You just
grow
have to keep them
wild.
trimmed back.
Oh yeah, we had wild black raspberries in Ohio that always did great, but I never even tried to do the domestic ones. I'm
Right.
struggling
Well,
with
I mean,
blackberries
they
down
grow
here.
well. I'm just saying they get out of hand if you don't keep them pruned.
Oh, well, yes, you do have to keep them pruned. Anything
I
that's like vining like that, or because they like to come up on they come up down the root. But yes, same thing down here. Our big thing is passion vine. You plant a passion vine, and it will try to come up 3 blocks away.
So what are some other crops? I would say like asparagus is a decent
Yeah,
perennial.
asparagus isn't super long lived down here, but I'm gonna grow it again. I just got some more bare root to plant.
I'm having
and then,
trouble thinking of perennials that aren't fruit or herbs right now.
So okay, it's largely gonna depend on your zone. So down here in Florida, we're very tropical. We have a lot of fruit trees that we can do. Rosemary tends to come back. We have some more like tropical type herbs that will come back if they don't get a hard freeze. I am babying a Cuban oregano right now to make sure it doesn't completely die off on me.
My oregano always comes back.
Well, no, this is Cuban oregano.
Okay.
So it is not even in the same family as oregano, but it has the same flavor. So the leaves are like big and fat and fuzzy. I'll have to send you a picture. Well, once it comes back, because the top half of it froze. But yeah, it loves heat. Anyway, but ginger and turmeric, like either of those, well, basically they're in the same family. I know, but they're perennial down here. In fact, they're one that like you can plant in the shade and completely neglect them and they will thrive. If you're looking at medicinal herbs, comfrey is a good one. Comfrey is almost impossible to kill no matter where you live.
Watch where you plant it because it will grow everywhere.
Yeah. If you're up north, mint. Down here, not so much. It hates the heat.
Don't plant mint. I always plant mine in pots because
it
goes everywhere.
It needs to be like, if you're going to plant it in the ground, be prepared for it to take over. But when we had it in Ohio, like we always had plenty of mint tea available.
Yeah. I mean, I grow mine in pots and it's still, we have plenty to make mint tea. Plenty.
If you are in the South where it doesn't freeze, peppers can actually be grown as a perennial. Some are indeterminate tomatoes, as long as, really down here, if you want to actually keep an indeterminate tomato through the summer, it needs to be a cherry tomato. Bay leaves, although I just killed my bay laurel. I didn't mean to. I didn't know it was dead.
See, like a lot of those we can grow up here in pots and just bring them in.
Bring them in when it gets cold. Yeah.
Right. Even like bay laurel. I know people up here that just grow like a big potted plant and it mostly stays inside. I mean, people grow lemons up here and just
right
on a big potted plant. So I guess those are all perennials. It can be up here. You just have to be able to bring them in.
Yeah. Bring them in and out. Well, yeah. Cause that's the nice thing with anything that stays that shrub size is you don't need a giant container for it either.
Right.
I mean, if you got like a 5-gallon grow bag or something like that, it can live pretty happy in that and just bring it in and out.
I know my neighbors, when we lived in our old house, grew peppers as perennials up here. Mm-hmm. They put them in 5-gallon buckets and they had a sunroom and they would put them in their sunroom in the winter. And then they put them back out in the summer.
Out in the summer.
Yeah. And they grew some more. I'm like, wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea you could do that.
Right.
They were from like the Philippines or something. They knew what they were doing.
Well, yeah. I know that's the funny thing is, like Florida, our growing conditions are actually very similar to the Philippines.
Right.
Except that they never freeze and we might get a freeze with our falling iguanas.
I would say, even people in suburban and urban areas could, if you want a sustainable source of meat, raise rabbits. Mm-hmm. I was talking to this woman the other day about how we need to normalize rabbit meat because so many people are like, oh, they're so cute, fuzzy, and they are. But I love eating sustainable.
I love eating rabbit meat. I just don't love killing rabbits.
Right. But at the same time, like baby cows are cute. And I know we don't kill them as baby cows. And anybody that says that we do is crazy. But they're cute.
Yeah.
And I mean, honestly, cows are cute animals, even grown, not so much bulls, but even like pigs, like when you think about it, where do we draw the line of what's cute?
Well, yeah.
Too cute to eat.
I've got attached to my pigs. I can't imagine, I've got my breeders that I probably never get another litter of piglets out of them, but I also can't imagine turning them into sausage. And I realize that makes me soft, but.
Well, yeah. Well, like our breeder rabbits, I don't think I could butcher them and eat them. I don't think.
Yeah.
If I was hungry enough.
I just rebred ours, so we're gonna see if we can get over this hurdle.
I said rabbits. And chickens and gardening. Learn to can.
Yes. Well, and I think we've mentioned this before, but cooking from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Also, invest in some good cast iron and learn how to cook over the campfire.
Yeah, definitely.
Or even, if you've got a wood stove, you can use it on the wood stove. That's one thing I love about cast iron is it's so versatile. Like it can handle so much heat. So you can do it over the fire or on the stove. It can go in the oven.
Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about, it being safe in the oven up to a certain temperature because it'll be fine.
Right. Same thing. If you've got a grill, you can use it on the grill.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one thing I will say, so an issue we ran into a lot with the hurricanes is we would always end up having a really hard time finding propane leading up to the storm. So I would say have an alternate source for cooking.
Mm-hmm.
So either charcoal or have wood. I know you guys keep wood for heating the house anyway.
Yes. And I think that is important. Not necessarily that you have wood to heat your house, but that you have a way to heat your house should you have,
right.
Like a long-term power failure or, what have you, because even LP or gas or whatever, furnaces run off of electricity in order to, kick on.
Fan.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well, even just to kick on to ignite, just like your oven on the gas stoves, they work off of electronic ignition and they have electronic thermostats and all that stuff.
But isn't there a way to still go turn on or light the pilot manually?
Not on new ones.
There
used to be. You used to be able to
and I'm thinking back 20, 30 years. Yeah.
Right. But now, we have a gas stove. I can use the stove top, but you cannot use the oven if there is no power.
Okay.
Because everything's a button on the back of it anyway. So it's not knobs anymore. And everything's electronic. The ignition's electronic and the thermostat.
See, and this is why I haven't gotten an Instapot. Is the more electronics you introduce, the more things that can break.
I have one, but I don't hardly ever use it.
I might get
3 times.
Yeah, I might get an air fryer. Just because I refuse to get a toaster oven, and it seems like that would be a nice middle ground. But when it for pressure cooking, I just have a regular old fashioned pressure cooker that
I use my regular pressure cooker way more than I use Instant Pot. So
yeah. But also in terms of you were talking about heating your home, if you live in the South, also figuring out a way to stay cool. Now, we have a generator and we ended up borrowing a portable AC unit.
Mm-hmm.
Because when we had Hurricane Irma, Simon was a month old and I was still recovering from my C-section. So it was we were not handling heat super well.
Right.
But there are other ways to stay cool. If it's just having a shaded area outside where you can sit and have a hand fan or something like that, drinking lots of water, because I know how much you love to harp on drinking water. Have your children destroyed the house yet?
No, a sheriff car just went flying by my house.
Oh, good times. At least they didn't stop.
That's the second siren I've heard today, though, because we had a fire truck that went by at 5:30 this morning.
Oh, wow. Okay. But yeah, and then like I said, just really looking at everything from a problem solving mentality. What could what could you do if you had to with the resources you have available? Or if you
Right.
couldn't with the resources you have available, what resources could you make available that,
Right. Like
can
even
help you
like
solve your
learning
problem?
how to like forage,
Mhm.
all your local edible foods. And of course, like, we mentioned, always try to source local and forge those relationships. And then as far as like drinking water, especially, I don't really know. I would assume that if you had like a huge power outage, you would run out of water in the city as well. But I know a lot of those systems are gravity fed. But as far as a
Well,
well goes,
what we had, so when we evacuated into town for Hurricane Irma,
mhm,
and the house we were staying at, like they had water up to a point, but then um the backup power for the um water, it's not called the water station, but like where they clean the water.
yeah, I know what
You
you're
know what
talking
I'm
about.
talking.
Yeah,
Their backup power went out, which then meant that the whole town was out. And then even once they got the water back up and running, then there was a boil water notice.
right.
Um, Now for us, yeah, our well runs off electric and it pulls a lot of power. And so we were not able to keep it turned on the generator. Like we would have, if we needed to use the well, we would have to turn everything off, everything else off, and then run just the well. And then we could turn the well back on. Like,
Really?
because we were controlling the
How
breakers.
big is your pump?
I don't know. And it may have had more to do with not having a big enough generator.
Right.
But because um, we had an outlet wired into the breaker box so that we can plug a generator into the breaker box.
Right.
And then all we do is we're switching breakers on and off. And yes, we turned off the main so that it doesn't
Yes,
backfeed
if
to the.
you do exactly. If you
Actually,
do
I guess
that,
maybe we should mention that because a lot of people don't realize that.
right, please turn your main off because you could literally kill a lineman if you do not. And we do not want to
Yes.
do that. It is a big
No, we need
risk. It
them.
is serious. So please, I actually have a friend.
If you want your power on, keep your linemen alive.
Yeah, I have a girlfriend I used to work with when I was a phlebotomist, and she's a lineman now. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah,
That's a change.
I know. So yeah, don't kill her.
Let's go from drawing blood to playing with high voltage.
Yes. Yeah. She just got her journeyman's like a year and a half ago. So
Okay,
she's
that's cool.
Yep.
Yeah. So yes, if you're there is a way that you can have a licensed electrician come and set up an outlet so that you can plug the generator in so it can power your house. However, you have to turn off the main that goes to the main power line, so that power is not backfeeding up the line and then electrocuting any linemen that might be working on the line.
Right.
Anyway, but yes, so my goal is actually to get a hand pump put on the well. The downside is they really only work on shallow wells, which shouldn't be an issue for us because Florida, our water table is really high. But that is something to keep in mind if you want to get
How deep is your
hand
well?
pump. I think Matt said it's around 200 feet.
Okay. Well, then yours is deeper than ours.
Yeah, I don't know. I got double. He knows better than I do.
Ours is like 183 feet at its
Okay.
deepest point, and we hit water at like 45 feet.
Okay. A lot of times, like, yeah, we can hit water a lot more shallow, but to get the good water, you usually have to go deeper.
Right. Yeah. Our pump
So I
sits
think
like
that's
80 feet down, I think.
yeah. I'm not even entirely sure. So
Well, we just had all that stuff done. So I actually
yeah,
have like paperwork that tells me all that stuff. So.
right.
Having a hand pump or, like a solar pump for
Unless
your
you live in
well.
the woods, solar doesn't work so super well in the woods.
Yeah, but I mean, those are both options. Make sure that if you know that there's impending inclement weather, like a hurricane or whatever, fill your tub or
Yes.
some buckets or whatever, so that you and your animals can have some water. I hate plastic bottles. We always keep at least one case of bottled water, at least.
Mm-hmm.
In
what
the
we
winter,
do is
we usually keep a little more.
Yeah, like we end up keeping like separate containers for the potable and the non-potable water.
Right.
For water for the animals, we're filling up like every trough we have outside.
Right.
Inside, if I'm going to fill up the bathtub, I'm probably going to use it to flush the toilet more so than to drink it. But like we have, juice pitchers, and I have a lot of the half-gallon mason jars. And so like those are usually the things that I'm filling up with water. And then we have a cooler that we're keeping them in because I'm trying to reduce how much I'm opening and closing the refrigerator.
Right.
And then, and then we'll usually like turn the well on a couple times a day. Because for us, we were out of power for 5 days.
Right.
So we'll turn it on a couple times a day so we can refill the pitchers and the water troughs,
right,
and still have fresh water. But yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest thing you really have to focus on in terms of figuring out what your water, like in addition to your food supply, you can go without food for a lot longer than you can go without water.
Right.
So figuring out how you're going to keep hydrated.
Right. And, there are things like the life straws and stuff like that, where if you needed to, get water that's not really potable from a creek or a stream or whatever, so that you can actually
get a life straw, figure
water.
out how to use it ahead of time, because there's a knack to it. So I actually taught for our homeschool co-op, I taught a safety and survival skills class for like upper elementary boys. And I got a life straw, like to show everyone how to use it to drink water, like out of a creek, for instance, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we had such a hard time sucking the water up through the straw because I didn't realize like it needs to be submerged for so many minutes before you try sucking the water out of it, because it almost has to like suck the water up first. And then, I don't know. I need to go back and practice with it. But
and as far as you're talking about having mason jars filled and stuff like that, and that's all great as long as you can plan for it. Like,
right.
But I was talking about, we always make sure we have crummy plastic bottles of water, because sometimes you can't plan for it.
That's true.
Like if you have a tornado, it's not like, a week in advance that you're going to have a tornado. And yes, the tornado could knock your house down and blow the water away, but we can all hope.
Well, and hopefully if you live in somewhere where tornadoes are prevalent, you have some type of a shelter. So like, unless you decide to do something silly, like have a double wide in Indiana, that doesn't have a basement.
You live in a double wide in Florida. So
we don't have that many tornadoes though.
You guys just had a tornado down there.
When? Where?
When we had that snowstorm.
Oh yeah. But it wasn't, they're not that frequent.
And you don't have tornadoes, you have hurricanes.
Tornado shelter's not going to do me a whole lot of good in a hurricane because it's going to be flooded.
No,
and that's the thing is we actually really don't have tornado shelters, period, because our water table's so high, anything underground is going to flood.
Right.
So you have to like go find an interior closet and hope for the best.
Yeah, we do have a crawl space on our house. It's just only 3 blocks, so it's
right. Yeah,
we
that's
are on
kind of
foundation.
ours. Oh, well, that's good. We're not.
I mean, it's made out of cinder blocks, so
no, we have some cinder blocks. Yeah, like we have some cinder blocks along the metal framing underneath the house.
Yeah,
and then we don't have that. Strapping the house to the ground.
Yeah, see, we don't have skirting or any of that. We actually sit on a foundation. Okay. We're bolted in, so
you're fancy.
Yeah, but our neighbors across the street have a big cellar, so I mean, we could run over there and knock their door down and tell them to let us in. But we do have a way to get shelter. But my point was that if you have a tornado or stuff really hits the fan, and we had some kind of something that happened, so that you have some water until you can hopefully get more water.
Yes. And the point that I was trying to make is that your shelter is a really good place for storing said water.
Well, it could also be a great place for storing like your canned goods and things like that as well. So maybe they don't blow down the road, but maybe.
Theoretically.
Yeah. First aid. Everybody should know basic first aid, CPR. Everybody should have a pretty robust first aid kit.
If for
Make
no other
sure-
reason, if you're living this lifestyle, you are going to put a nail through your hand at some point.
and not only for you, but also for your animals.
Well, yeah. I usually joke that I have a larger first aid kit for my animals than I do for myself.
I think
Or
we
for my
just talked
humans.
about this the other day. I know that you should, of course, know how to build yourself a shelter and how to source water, forage,
Mhm.
and how to know direction.
Oh, yeah. Or well,
Is,
just how to use a compass in general.
I think like knowing how to tell direction based off of the sun, the stars, just a basic direction, so you're not getting completely lost. How to build yourself a temporary shelter and how to signal.
All right. So basically what we're trying to get at. All right. Focus not so much on having a long-term stockpile, but focus on preserving your own stuff, having enough for your family for, however many months or at the most for the next year. And really focus on creating or learning skills that are going to help you in emergency and then help you to rebuild. Obviously, this is a very big topic that we could probably talk about for a lot longer. So look to the show notes for a link to the printable that Danielle is going to create that I will make her finish before next Tuesday.
Okay. I got a week.
All right. I think that is it for this episode. And we will catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Grounded in Simplicity podcast. If we were able to help you in any way, please share this episode with a friend and also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. You can also join us over on Patreon at Grounded in Simplicity and help to support this podcast, as well as become a patron and get a behind the scenes look at the creation of our podcast and even have some input on future episodes.